Truth Frequency Radio.
Whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he cometh in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed on Truth Frequency Radio. As always, we appreciate and thank all of you for taking the time to join us in live broadcasts. I'm honored to have as guest with me Rob Skiba for a continuation on our introspection of the book of Enoch, going chapter by chapter and verse by verse. We did make it up to chapter 16 last week. This is the third in the series. Today will be the fourth in the series. But Rob, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'll try that again. I'm doing good, Zen. How are you doing?
Doing well, man. I was checking out the latest upload of the End from the Beginning conference, which is really a pretty amazing speech. You want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. In fact, for those joining us on YouTube, I'll do a screen share, let everybody know. I just actually created a playlist for it. I did 2 lectures there. It's one of those deals where before I went to the conference, I'm like, dude, can you please give me 2 hours?
Right.
And they did. So I had, I believe I had 2 2-hour sessions, if memory serves. This was like February of last year. And so, of course, on the version I just uploaded, I added another hour to it, so almost an hour. It's close to 3 hours with the 9 parts. I did 20 parts total in 2 presentations. So what I just did this week is get the 9 parts of presentation 1 up, and I put them out as separate videos, one for each part, and just put together a playlist for that. So if people go to my YouTube channel and click on the playlist link, they'll see the Genesis Revelation declaring the end from the beginning. And in that first one, I was just making the case for biblical cosmology. But what was really a blessing for me, I remember where I was in my headspace last year. This time last year, I was so one of many times I'm done. I quit. I'm getting a job at Walmart. I'm sick of this crap, and literally drugged myself to that conference. I had no motivation. I loved the people. I enjoy the interaction with the audience, but I had no desire to speak, And I was in the bathroom right before I was supposed to go up on stage, and Steve Mutria was there. And he's like, "Hey, how you doing, man?" I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." he's like, "Well, what are you gonna be talking about?" I'm like, "Yeah, the usual." He's like, "You don't seem really very motivated." I'm like, "I'm not, man." He prayed with me, and when I got in there and I got up there to do my talk, I said, I'm gonna try to get a pulse on the audience. And so early on in the lecture, I asked the audience, I said, here are the things I'm most criticized for. Flat Earth being number 1, the issue of the Nephilim, the return of the Nephilim. Number 2, the issue of Nimrod, Tower of Babel, Antichrist. Number 3, and Ephraim Awakening. Number 4. Those things I get the most flack over. And I said, how many of you here, and there's over 200 people I would say in the audience, I said, how many of you here would say you have gained a greater understanding of the scriptures or a closer relationship with Yahuwah as a result of any of these topics right here, and easily 99% of the audience stood up. There might have been one or two that didn't, but when I looked out, it was like the whole audience stood up. And that was at that time was a real kiss. And even editing the videos this week, I get choked up watching it again. I'm like, oh wow, God, that's just, it's what keeps you in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you see stuff like that, and I don't really know why I felt led to put this up. I mean, it's been a year practically, but I had a little bit of time on my hands this week. Everybody in South Africa had a break over the New Year's holiday. So there wasn't anybody working on seed, and now they're all trying to get caught up on stuff. So this week was kind of a down time for me. I'm like, well, I've got the time. I'm going to put it up. And then I get an email yesterday from Coast to Coast AM, and
awesome.
They sent me an invite to be on the show on the 29th, I believe it is. I think yeah, January 29th. Richard Surrett, I think is how you say his name. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Richard Surrett. He has a show. It's called The Conspiracy Show, Reframing Reality or something like that is I think the subtitle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, well, considering you might have to change the logo though. He had a picture of the globe there, but I said, yeah, I'm honored. Thank you. Yeah, I would definitely be interested. So we're in negotiations on that, but I think that's probably going to happen. So.
Very cool, man. That's awesome.
And he's like, look, I'm an Orthodox Christian. I don't necessarily believe the earth is flat, but I'm open to you changing my mind. And, they specifically wanted to talk about the content on testingtheglobe.com. So I'm like, okay.
Nice.
I'm game for that. And maybe this video was kind of a preemptive strike on it.
Perfect, yeah.
Because it was really laying out the biblical case. I mean, I've done similar presentations, many times, but I felt like this one was pretty concise, and so, who knows? We'll see what happens, but that's how my week's been going.
Well, what I really enjoyed and what I really like about this presentation is the fact that you showed, when they first caught you at the conference and you're talking with the other people and they ask you about biblical cosmology. And then all of a sudden, the rest of the panelists and the crowd just all bust out in laughing, and almost in really just mocking manner. Like, how could you even consider, this, as possibility? And then all of the attacks, because both of us kind of went through this together, and both of us were attacked, criticized, but your work is widely recognized and respected amongst the alternative truth community, whereas I'm like the black sheep of the family. So you got the heavy end of a lot of that flack, and for you to incorporate that and to show that in the kind of the whole journey to accepting and standing on this as truth. I thought that was spectacular as well, because so many people that just will not even examine, and even in their own words they prove themselves hypocrites, and it's funny how they will dance around truth and just hold on to the whole NASA lies and the whole, because it's so easy to verify and affirm that no curvature exists, Earth is not moving, all the stories in regard to, the scriptures testifying that the Earth is flat, stationary, motionless, those kind of things, like, we've done in show previously with Joshua's long day and Isaiah's the sun going back on the sun. Those kind of things cannot be explained in any other manner, and yet they're laughing at us. It's just crazy.
Yeah, for the reason I decided to put that the ridicule in there was because it was to juxtapose what I had just seen, that, you know, I asked people, you know, in the audience, how many of you would say you do not believe the Bible describes the Earth as a flat, circular, enclosed world? And there's only like maybe a half dozen people at the most. I think it was more like 2 or 3 out of like 200. And I was just struck by, you know, that was 2019. And you're right, that other clip, that was 2015, and I had only been into it 1 month, barely that. It was like April 15th I got introduced to the subject, and I want to say it was, well, maybe it was exactly a month, maybe been mid-May, like the middle of May or something, but like 1 month. So at that point I hadn't even accepted it. You know, I was like, you know, I'm just looking into it. But yeah, I mean, you know, that was the first question. You know, I'm on a panel with other, you know, widely recognized, you know, Torah people, and you know, the first question is, yeah, so Rob, you still stuck on the fact the Earth's flat, you know? And yeah, everybody laughed. And at that moment, you know, I'm thinking I might as well just get off the stage. You know, like, what's the point of even staying on the stage? Because anything I say after that, you know, it's already been, you know, invalidated.
Right.
But my answer was, I said, look, I'm not convinced of anything yet, except for the fact that the people in the Bible believed it, and so you know, now we're going to have something to wrestle with, you know, or something that I'm paraphrasing, but that was essentially my answer then, and that's really the position that I'm adopting now, also, especially as a result of looking at all that, is going, you know what, you know, I'm not going to try to convince you there's flat. What I will try to convince you of, and I think I'll be successful at it too, because words mean things, is that beyond any reasonable doubt, the Holy Spirit inspired authors of Scripture clearly did, and and that being the indisputable truth, you're going to have a decision to make at the end of it, you know.
Exactly.
And I'm not going to try to convince you what to do, but you're going to have to decide: is it the infallible, inerrant, Holy Spirit inspired Word of God that is true, or not? Because that's what it comes down to. And I was just thinking about it today, kind of dwelling on the whole thing, is that's ultimately what it really comes down to. Are you going to believe the Bible or not? Because that's what God was saying to me for the whole year that I was doubting and praying. And the whole time is like, I said what I said, you know. And after the Lake Michigan test, the response to the same prayers wasn't, it changed from I said what I said to, are you going to believe me now, Rob, or what?
Yes, right.
And it was the or what part that scared me. So I said, you know what, Father, I've got no reason to doubt you. I've got every reason to doubt them. So, you know, you know, to add that the only other thing is, you know, to be completely transparent, and honest, I still have questions. There's still things that I haven't resolved yet, that I don't have answers for, you know, in terms of how things work and whatnot. But the one thing I do know for certain is that the canonized text, as well as the Book of Enoch, absolutely affirms the circular, still flat Earth set on pillars under a dome within which the sun, moon, and stars were placed on day 4. That's not in question for me.
Right. And then the whole other thing with regard to, you know, what we did with beginning at Genesis 1, going through the creation week, you know, the earth and the heavens being created and the luminaries not until day 4. I mean, there are serious problems with the whole heliocentric model. And then the other thing is, you know, let God be true and every man a liar. And as you had presented and placed it, if people are not going to accept and they're going to go through all these mental gymnastics to kind of make up and the whole doctrine of accommodation, as you were speaking about, even when it's self-evident and clear, you know, even the position of Mike Heiser in telling everybody what it says, but then denying it as truth. I mean, are you going to believe the Bible or not?
He is probably one of the most frustrating people I have ever encountered. In fact, I posted something about that today. I said, I'm sorry, but I got to say, Dr. Michael Heiser is probably one of the most frustrating people I've ever encountered. On the one hand, he could be so brilliant, and he is brilliant. I mean, if you listen to him, he's got some like really great stuff. But on the other hand, he quite clearly is blinded by so-called science, and thus we have to witness
Right.
him doing unbelievable mental gymnastics to justify why he refuses to believe what he just proved the Bible actually says.
Right.
And
Right.
then I add to that, by believing in the doctrine of accommodation, he and others who believe this, they demonstrate that they believe divine inspiration and the inerrancy of Scripture is either demonstrably false, or that Yahuwah is a liar, and or both. And
Right.
it's just what happens when you blend the wisdom of this world with that of a creator who calls such wisdom foolishness.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And so, again, there's been so much growth because those people that have looked into it and actually opened themselves to the possibility of the things that we've been talking about for a long time now, we've seen a great shift. I mean,
Yeah.
the contrast from you being asked that question on that panel to where things are now and how much, people really just appreciate the studies and the stances that we've taken in standing for truth, and again the inerrancy of God's word and the inspiration of the prophets, and sharing what they have shared.
Hmm.
And then, the whole other thing with the firmament and the solid structure of it, I mean, there's no getting around that either. And so,
Yeah.
a lot of people, uh, appreciating those that first open entered into the study with open mind, because that's the hardest thing. And most people are unable to overcome their indoctrination to even do so, and then to be honest with the evidence, because science is absolutely on our side. No curvature, the dynamics of water, water cannot adhere to the ball or take on a curved shape. There's no motion. We're not spinning at 1,037 miles an hour. Um, those kind of things are easy when you consider them in negating the whole possibility of what we've been taught our whole lives in school, and what most of the world still believes, because it's got to be still 90% at least,
Oh
if
yeah.
not more.
Yeah, easily.
uh, yeah, so
Well, the other thing that's interesting about sort of the events of this week that took place for me, when I got the email invite to Beyond Coast to Coast, which with Richard Surrett, um, I decided to look up who this guy was because I wasn't familiar with him. So
mhm,
I forget the name of his channel or his website. Conspiracyshow.ca, I think, is his website. In fact, I'll look that up. And so I decided to see, listen to some of his previous shows. See what else
mhm,
he's talked about. And turns out, like 2 shows ago, I believe it was, he had interviewed Tom Horn, and he interviewed him regarding Tom's new book, The Wormwood Prophecy. Now, I'll say this: before I came into biblical enclosed world cosmology, I would have been totally sucked in to Tom's latest work.
uh-huh,
I'd have been all over it, been on the same page, probably been, like, yeah, this is something serious. And his thesis, and of course, in the beginning of the show, they're talking about how NASA lies about everything. you know, and in the context of what they're saying is there's a cover up, according to them, NASA's covering up the fact that Apophis, this Earth killing asteroid, is headed to Earth, and they know it, so they're obfuscating the truth, and they're not letting people know about it. So NASA's lying. So they're making the case that NASA lies about a great many things, while at the same time they're parroting what NASA's told them about
right,
this alleged object. So it's
right.
like, on the one hand,
And the solar system.
yeah, in the solar system and everything else. On the one hand, you're proving that these people are not trustworthy, and yet you're trusting them with the information that you're presenting.
Right.
And so, according to, Tom's believes he's had a prophetic dream, and I'm not going to, cast judgment on that. It's what it is. He believes that's what it is. Okay, that's what he thinks.
Mhm.
that he had a vision of this thing, and then he looked into it, and then found out apparently that this asteroid allegedly is headed to Earth, and the target date of impact is April 13th, 2029. So we've got 9 years, and it's going to happen. Just so happens to be on a Friday the 13th, of course. So on Friday the 13th, April 2029, most of the Earth's going to get wiped out by wormwood. So, I'm listening to this, and in my head, I'm thinking, first of all, why are you trusting NASA? Second of all, if you use the exact same critical thinking skills that you're using to analyze biblical narratives for everything else, I listen to all these scholars that will use the Strong's Concordance to show you the Hebrew and show you the Greek, and this is what the Bible's really saying. For every other topic under the sun, until you bring up biblical cosmology, and then all of a sudden, no, Strong's isn't really all that reliable, and it's figures of speech, it's poetry. That's not really what it means. It's like, look, if you applied the same logic and same critical thinking skills that you're doing for all these other things that you're looking into when you approach the text, and do the exact same thing with the exact same tools on this subject, you're going to come to the same conclusion that we did, because it's inescapable. Words mean things,
right?
So I'm thinking, in the enclosed world cosmology that I now understand, that's not possible.
Exactly, right.
So I'm not terribly worried about April 29th, coming. But that said, I'm also reminded of, Dr. Carol Rawson, supposedly was like a protege or something of Verner Von Braun. And she said in his dying days, weeks, months, whatever, he was really concerned about exposing some things that he knew were lies. And according to her testimony, he told her that first they're going to make a big case for space-based weapons because, of the Russians. Then it'll be because of third world countries, and she's giving all these different things that he said was going to be the case. And then he said it was going to be because of asteroids. And she said he chuckled when he said that. And then she said, this where everything became comical. He thought it was funny. And then they said, and the last card is the aliens. And he said to her, all of it is a lie. Mm-hmm. Now, okay, Verner von Braun, of course, he's a Nazi. He's the head of the space program that got us supposedly, the Apollo program and all that stuff. Look, I believe that he was a Nazi. I think history proves that out. Where was he at the end of his life in terms of his spiritual walk? I don't know. He's got Psalm 19:1 on his tombstone. Somebody had that put there. I don't know if it was him or his family or whatever. Odd scripture to put there.
Right.
But on top of that, he apparently sewed into his secretary, or maybe he's made some confessions here or something, but said all of it's a lie. And so if NASA is telling us that there are, extinction level, asteroids headed our way, and we get Trump, we got to have a space force, this is following the script that he was aware of and was trying to warn people of in his dying days.
Yeah. And it also seems that he was not happy with the way that the program was going towards the end of his life. And he seems to have, as you said with Carol, to release some information, at least to her. And she made it public as well, and released it to us with regard to, that all these deceptions and all the lies and how they were going to tie together and come together in what the Bible, in my opinion, alludes to, at least in some part, as being the strong delusion, and its connections, the foundation being the Darwinian, Copernican, heliocentric model for understanding world, its links to what will be the coming reign of the Antichrist, and the whole premise, as is being pushed even now, that the ancient aliens are our creators. Yeah. And we are, without a doubt, seeing all that come to light.
Well, yeah, I was talking with Sheila earlier, and just out for a walk, and I was saying, I don't know what Christians think when they read the scriptures and it says Satan comes with all signs and lying wonders to go forth and deceive the whole world. What do you think that means? I mean, you read that, but what do you think it means? I mean, what is literally the whole world? The whole world, you take everybody in every walk of the world. They have various opinions of, who or what God is, and, all kinds of opinions about all kinds of different things. But one thing everybody believes is that the Earth's a globe.
Right.
The whole world believes that. I can't think of anything else that the whole world is in 100% agreement on.
Right, exactly. Especially with it, again, coming to light now, and so many people believe it's like worthless to even investigate it. And yet when it comes to this deception and the premise of the ancient aliens being our creators, it totally nullifies, negates even the possibility of those things being in any manner truthful. And so, when it comes to that deception, it is the kryptonite to that possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, we got just a few seconds before break, but go ahead, brother.
I found the guy's website. It's conspiracyshow.strangeplanet.ca. Strange Planet.
Strange Planet. Interesting.
But his email to me was very cordial. He's like, this is not a hit piece or anything. I'm genuinely interested in talking with you, and I don't believe this, but hey, I'm willing to. He said, I personally don't believe the Earth is flat, but I'm totally open to having you change my mind. Okay.
Very cool.
That's the kind of guy. Awesome. That's the kind of guy I want to talk to.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll be right back, everyone.
Discover the extraordinary powers of intuitive healing with pain transmutation, a method of holistic healing for the human soul, body, mind, and emotions. If you are looking for answers and a deep understanding of how to help yourself and the people around you to live a happier, healthier life, this is the right place for you. Learn how to read your soul's history in the Akashic Records. Remove negative energy attachments from your astral body and start the process of inner and outer pain transmutation. Join Pain Transmutation Community to get started on the path of intuitive healing. Change your energetic state, manifest new and exciting experiences, re-energize your life, and build inspiring connections with others in our community.
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up, standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
More than a dozen astronauts have officially reported UFOs. Hundreds of hours of UFO footage were filmed by astronauts aboard the space shuttle. Many of these UFOs can only be seen in ultraviolet light. Retired former Apollo astronauts and cosmonauts now tell their stories of their own personal UFO encounters.
The Enigma Channel, intelligent television for planet Earth. EnigmaTV.com.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
You're listening to Truth Frequency Radio.
We are TFR.
And in those days, there were giants in the land, and the sons of the angels of God looked upon the daughters of men and found them fair, and took of them wives, and their sons became of old great men of renown. So they have been mixing with us on a genetic level since the time of Enoch and Ezekiel's will.
Here on Earth, we're intrigued by the sun, moon, and stars, and imagine there's got to be planets like ours. So conceive of a face on the surface of Mars, so in need of a meaning and purpose we've lost. And indeed, they believe that these might be our gods, or that maybe with time we'll do right and evolve, and eventually reach what they seek, and then solve all the problems of man. But they really don't know that they call it the works of our hands, all but just filthy rags. So we travel the lands to dig up our past, time elapses, and with it are much of the facts. Some imagine that gods came in alien grass and react to this way.
On the 10th heaven, Aravath, I saw the appearance of the Lord's face like iron made to glow in fire, and brought out amid sparks, and it burns. Thus I saw the Lord's face, but the Lord's face is ineffable, marvelous, and very awful, and very, very terrible. And who am I to tell of the Lord's unspeakable being, and of his very wonderful face? All right, welcome back, everybody. That was Enoch when he was taken up and met the Most High face to face, and just awesome in aspect, and I can't imagine. But the words that Enoch uses to display just the overpowering glory of being in the presence of the Most High is absolutely an interesting read and very powerful in context. But definitely, you ready to get into it, brother?
Yeah. We left off in 16, I think.
Yep.
We got through 16 last time.
Got through 16, yep.
Okay.
We're on 17 now.
All right. I think I've got the Lawrence translation up here. So I'll go ahead and read from that, and you can do the Charles again.
Yep.
I think we're in sync now, too, chapter-wise, I think.
Yes.
It looks like it anyway. So, chapter 17. They raised me up into a certain place where there was the appearance of a burning fire, and when they pleased, they assumed the likeness of men. They carried me to a lofty spot, to a mountain, the top of which reached to heaven. Interesting. And I beheld the receptacles of light and of thunder at the extremities of the place where it was deepest. There was a bow of fire, and arrows in their quiver, a sword of fire, and every species of lightning. Then they elevated me to a babbling stream, and to a fire in the west, which received all the setting of the sun. I came to a river of fire, which flowed like water, and emptied itself into the great sea westwards. I saw every large river until I arrived at the great darkness. I went to where all of flesh migrate, and I beheld the mountains of the gloom which constitutes winter, and the place from which issues the water in every abyss. I saw also the mouths of all the rivers in the world, and the mouths of the deep.
Yeah, this is a very interesting passage. A lot here, but I'll read first and then we'll discuss.
Yep.
And they took and brought me to a place in which those who were there were like flaming fire. And when they wished, they appeared as men. And they brought me to the place of darkness, and to a mountain, the point of whose summit reached to heaven. And I saw the places of the luminaries, and the treasuries of the stars, and of the thunder, and in the uttermost depths where were a fiery bow and arrows, and their quiver, and a fiery sword, and all the lightnings. And they took me to the living waters, and to the fire of the west, which receives every setting of the sun. And I came to a river of fire, in which the fire flows like water, and discharges itself into the great sea towards the west. I saw the great rivers, and came to the great river, and to the great darkness, and went to the place where no flesh walks. I saw the mountains of the darkness of winter, and the place whence all the waters of the deep flow. I saw the mouths of all the rivers of the earth, and the mouth of the deep.
Wow. I mean, if this isn't the description of what Gerardus Mercator wrote
Absolutely.
to John Dee, I don't know what is.
Right. Yeah, without a doubt. And in my opinion, this is absolutely what Enoch is describing. The pinnacle, the mountain that tallest in the world and that reaches up into heaven. And then also there where all the waters and all the rivers, because we know that he describes them in quadrants and coming together as an indrawing sea, and that there's this huge whirlpool that leads into the abysmal chasm, into the bottomless pit. And we see that in Isaiah 14, we see this also reference, and most people don't understand what this is alluding to when it says, "For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit, and they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms?" And so I believe that this is exactly the same place. The Mount of the Congregation is that mountain which Gerardus Mercator does speak about there in the North Pole, the Rupus Negra, which means the black rock, and it's because of the magnetite, the lodestone mountain, which is the reason why all the compasses point north. I write a lot about this because I believe the sides of the north is also where the firmament, the vaulted dome of the earth, comes together in union, and it's only at the north that it meets, at where Polaris is, and that indicates and shows where the heavenly temple and the throne room of the Most High God is as well, and the place which, with regard to having a strategic overlook, if you're going to watch and look down upon all the occurrences of the earth, there's no better place than the sides of the north above the Mount of the Congregation.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that too, and I don't remember if we talked about it here on the show or not, or if it was just in conversation I had with somebody else. But where it says in Isaiah 40:22 that the inhabitants of earth appear as grasshoppers to him.
Yes, right.
And I don't know what your take is on the height of the firmament at its pinnacle, above the Mount of the Congregation, the sides of the north, Rupus Negra, Mount Meru, what have you. I estimated, and it's a pure estimation, it's just a guesstimate, based on stuff I was reading from Robotham and whatnot, on people who use a sextant or whatnot and triangulate and whatever to figure out the size and distance of the sun, calculated to be roughly 35 miles across and about 3,000 miles up. And so just based on that, and sort of drawing out a dome over the circle with that height in mind, I imagine the dome to be somewhere in the vicinity of about 10,000 miles. Pure guesstimate. Okay, I'm not basing that on anything other than just saying that there needs to be room for the sun to move around, and how high is this thing, and is the mountain higher than the sun, which I tend to think it probably is, that it goes right up to the top. So then we would look a lot smaller. We would be imperceptible, really. I mean, you wouldn't, to at least the human eye, humans wouldn't look like grasshoppers. We'd be too small. And then I thought, wait a minute, he's looking through a whole lot of water and through a hemisphere of a dome glass down at it. It'd be a magnifying glass.
Right, yeah,
so
that's what I think too.
The firmament and the water would be acting as a magnifier. And I was also thinking about that in reverse. Like, we launched several high-altitude weather balloons during the day. And right about 45,000 feet or so, and we got up to over 100,000 feet in our tests. But right about 45,000 feet, the sky starts to fade from blue into black. And then the balloon's traveling up in black, beyond that. And no matter where that camera was pointing, you don't see stars.
Right.
And so I was thinking about that just the other day, because I don't know if it's Venus or whatever it is, one of those stars that or planets or whatever that are, the first ones that you see in the sky as it begins to either dawn or dusk. There's always like that one up there, the morning star, as they say, I guess.
Yes.
And I'm looking at that thing and I'm going, wow, maybe, I mean, the reason why you're not seeing stars is because they are so stinking small and dim in their habitation. But when viewed through the lens of the atmosphere, we can see them.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So as the weather balloon goes up out of that lens, and as the atmosphere that is the lens becomes thinner and thinner, there's not enough magnification there to bring that illumination in.
That's interesting.
It was racking my mind, like, for the longest time, like, why is it that we can send this stuff up, and how come there's no stars, and how come NASA never has pictures of stars? Where are the stars? Like we see Star Wars and Star Trek, right? And stars are everywhere. You always see the Earth floating in like a sea of stars.
Right.
But yet when you go up there, you don't see them. And I'm thinking the only reason you do see them is because the Earth's atmosphere acts like the magnifying glass, and the stars are really dim and really small. And it's the atmosphere that's magnifying them for us.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I can see how that would work both ways. Not that, God needs a magnifying glass.
True, but that would give him the ability to see us as grasshoppers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And for the angels, that could serve dual purpose. And the firmament certainly seems to be a lens like that, and the semi-transparent nature of it in description, a sea of glass like unto crystal, that, it could certainly have those kind of properties. And we most certainly are able to see through it, because that's why, in my belief, the sky is blue. The waters above give us that that characteristic of seeing the sky as blue.
Yeah, Enoch is such a different book as soon as you adopt this cosmology that they had at the time when this book was written. This is what they believed, and I was thinking that it doesn't get wonky until like chapter 72, because that's where the segment of the heavenly luminaries starts to take off, for like 10 chapters or something like that. But I mean, here we are in chapter 17, and this whole chapter right here is a perfect description of, as we said earlier, for people who are listening that aren't aware, Gerardus Mercator, the Mercator map that we all grew up with in school on the wall. You had the globe in the corner, and you had that map on the wall. That's, chances are it was the Mercator map that was up there. With the guide who made that map, all the maps we have are missing part of, I think it was in the legend of it or something, like in the corners of the actual map that he drew, that he had the pictures of the north. And, he had this Rupus Negra mountain thing in the center with a open mouth that he later describes to, occultist, alchemist, mathematician John Dee. that there's like a, what is it, 30, no, it's like a 430 mile across or something like that, 480 miles, something like that, across whirlpool that goes down.
He says, yeah, 30. Its circumference is almost 33 French miles.
Well, that's the circumference of the mountain.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's not the whirlpool surrounding it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the mountain itself has a circumference of 33
Yes.
miles, which is interesting, right? 33.
Right.
But around that mountain is a deep chasm, bottomless pit,
Yes.
into which this massive whirlpool, like Niagara Falls going all the way around the thing, drops water into it, and feeding that whirlpool are 4 rivers that bisect like these 4 large islands, into quadrants. And so here's this guy who made the maps that we all have seen our whole life, is writing this letter to John Dee, who was like the advisor to, I don't know, was it Queen Elizabeth, I think, or one of the queens of England, whatever. And he's describing,
it was Queen Elizabeth.
Was it Elizabeth? He's describing all this in great detail, and here we are reading Enoch chapter 17, written thousands of years prior, and it's describing effectively the same thing.
Same thing, exactly. Yeah, I also believe that Job, and I'll read both of them for people that don't know what we're talking about. This is what Gerardus Mercator said to John Dee, and this is just a quote. He says, "In the midst of the 4 countries is a whirlpool, into which there empty these 4 indrawing seas, which divide the north, and the water rushes round and descends into the earth, just as if one were pouring it through a filter funnel. It is 4 degrees wide on every side of the pole, that is to say 8 degrees altogether, except that right under the pole there lies a bare rock in the midst of the sea. Its circumference is almost 33 French miles, and it is all of magnetic stone. This is a word for word everything that I copied out of this author, Jacobus Canoian, years ago." And so, he describes it, and I also believe that it's described in the book of Job in chapter 26, which I'll read that particular passage too. It says that dead things are formed from under the waters and the inhabitants thereof. Hell is naked before him, which is the abysmal chasm. The same thing where he says that Lucifer was cast down to the sides of the pit. And destruction hath no covering. He stretcheth out the north over the empty place, and hangeth the earth upon nothing. He bindeth up the waters in his thick clouds, and the clouds is not rent under them. He holdeth back the face of his throne, and spreadeth his cloud upon it. He hath compassed the waters with bounds, until the day and night come to an end. The pillars of heaven tremble, and are astonished at his reproof. And so, again, I think that there's so many instances where this place, this area, is described and spoken about in Scripture. Even in Ecclesiastes, in the Targum version of that, it speaks about this, where all the waters come together in this whirlpool. And I definitely think the next chapter that we go into describes it even further.
Nice. Yeah, when you were quoting Job 26, I decided to look that up real quick, put that on the screen for people who are watching on YouTube here. I like using BibleHub.com. They got some really good tools there, and specifically their parallel Bible tool. So you can look up a verse and see what it says in all the other English translations. And, King James just says destruction hath no covering, but most other English translations preserve the Hebrew there. And it says, Sheol is naked before him, and Abaddon has no covering. Now, Abaddon, Abaddon, however you pronounce it, that is Revelation 9:11. His name in Hebrew, it says Revelation 9:11. They were ruled by a king, and the angel of the abyss. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek it is Apollyon. And Apollyon is a derivative spelling of Apollo. Apollo in Greek mythology was the god of destruction,
Right.
and the giver and stayer of plagues and whatnot. So I mean, that's just really interesting.
I have well, after you're done, I have here the Targum translation of that as well, and it describes it as Abaddon as well. So
yeah.
when
Go
you're
ahead.
done, I'll read
Yeah,
it.
I'm done. I just wanted to point that out that it's a proper name used there.
Right.
You're missing it
Yeah,
in
I'm
King James.
glad you brought that up.
Destruction hath no covering. You're like, with destruction, But I mean, it's a proper name, Abaddon.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. In the Targum for Job, which is the Aramaic, it says, "Is it possible that the mighty who are decayed will recover when they are below the waters and their camps? Sheol is revealed before him, and the grave and Abaddon have no cover. He it is who stretches the north upon the void. He erects the earth over the waters without anything to support it, who binds up the rain in his clouds, and the clouds is not rent under it. He holds tightly the thick darkness about his throne so that the angels will not see him. He spreads the clouds of his glory over it like a curtain. He decreed that the firmament should dwell upon the surface of the waters as the boundary between light and darkness. The pillars of the heavens tremble and are shaken by his wrath." And the fact that it connects the firmament as well to, the sides of the north, and then the mount of the congregation, and then the seat of the Most High being above Polaris, shows to me exactly what Amos 9:6 and
Yeah.
how it is that the heavens and the firmament connects the heavens and the earth and binding them together.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
That's crazy awesome. Read that again, verse 10 in the Aramaic.
yeah. He decreed that the firmament should dwell upon the surface of the waters as the boundary between light and darkness. The
Wow.
pillars of the heaven tremble and are shaken by his wrath.
That is way more descriptive. I mean, we found in the past that the Targum certainly is, in many ways, a lot more descriptive.
Right.
But let me just share that on the screen. I got King James up right there. Because everybody uses, they only have two verses. Isaiah 40:22, circle the earth, and Job 26:7, that he hangs the earth on nothing. And look, I was there. I was one of those guys that used it myself. See, globe hanging in space, right? Totally not what it's saying there. And actually, verse 7, there's a lot going on there. We don't have time to unpack here, or maybe we could do it after the break or something. But stretch out the north over the empty space. There's a lot going on there. But what I now maintain is, he hangs the earth on no thing because it's set on pillars. And the Aramaic just knocks a home run in solidifying that fact in verse 10. King James just says, "He hath compassed the waters with bounds until the day and night come to an end." Other translations talk about, what is that, verse 10? He's inscribed a circle.
Proverbs.
Well, no, Job 26.
Describe the circle.
Well, Job 26:10 that's a parallel to Proverbs, though, because Proverbs says the same thing. But he has inscribed a circle on the face of the waters, English Standard Version, at the boundary between light and darkness. And just think about, again, take a slab of clay and get a dome. I remember my mom used to always have those what do you call them, legs, pantyhose, those eggs that they came in. You remember that?
Yeah, right.
The pantyhose that came in the egg thing, and she would throw those egg things away. But those are cool. You put stuff in them, right? I mean, so you imagine taking the bottom part of it that was like a half dome, and if you take that and put it into clay, what are you going to end up with? You're going to end up with a circle, carved into the clay. A circle is going to end up, inscribed in the clay. And we see that Job also says that the earth is like clay turned up at the seal, turned as a seal. But wow, the Aramaic there in verse 10, that just boom. Like no question what's being said there.
Right. Yeah, and when you look at so much of the other commentaries, which we won't go into all of that, but there's so much that I include from the extra biblical text in describing some of this stuff. We can cover, look at some of that before we move on. But if you look at the firmament, the vaulted dome of the earth, there's many breakdowns, parallel studies of each of the first 4 days of creation. And then specific, what we're talking about here is in Paradise, Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation. Because, when you look at a lot of the extra biblical material as we're bringing forward here, there's so much that is connected to even what Mercator, the map maker, and other historians and adventurers, explorers like the Invencio Fortunata goes into this in great detail as well. And so, and even the Odysseus, Jason and the Argonauts, and Virgil's Aeneid, the travels of Aeneas, they all describing this. They call it a sea monster, Charbardus, but it's actually speaking about this whirlpool. And so it's this particular phenomena that we see spoken about as being in the north. And we find that revealed in Scripture. And when we go into the next chapter, Enoch describes this in greater detail as well.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. I was thinking about reading this when we come back from the break, but it's quite lengthy, so I'll say, but no, I'll just tell people where to go to find it. If you go to testingtheglobe.com/pillars.html, that'll take you to the page where I'm addressing the issue of the pillars of the earth. It's part 6 in the series, and it talks about that.
Excellent. All right, we'll be right back, everyone, for the second hour.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like Beyond the Veil with Chris and Cherie Geo, X Squared with Brooks Agnew, Paranormal Portal with Brent Thomas, Jaronism Raw with Jaron and Missa, Fearless with Frank Castle, Strange World with Mark Sargent, The Eye of Ra with Ra Castaldo, The Infinite Fringe with Billy Ray, Ironworks with Josh Corey, The Kev Baker Show, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-TFR Live. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Embassy siege over. Provocative behavior. I'm Michael Toscano. The Iraqi military has just announced all of the pro-Iran paramilitary protesters have left the perimeter of the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad after a day and a night of rock throwing and starting fires. The Popular Mobilization Forces umbrella group, which wants the U.S. to withdraw forces from the region, made the call to stand down in response to a request from the Iraqi government. Correspondent Arwa Diamond remains at the embassy for us.
The Iraqi security forces are in the area now, and there is a fairly lengthy cleanup operation that is underway. Of course, a lot of questions as to where those Iraqi security forces were 24 hours ago, or even this morning when those protesters were attempting to scale the walls of the embassy.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un warns his country will soon show to the world a new strategic weapon, and he says North Korea is no longer obligated to maintain a moratorium on the testing of nuclear weapons and long-range missiles. Will Ripley reports it's a return to the old form.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un basically announced a return to the kind of provocative behavior that led to the start of diplomacy back in early 2018, saying that they're going to be announcing, revealing this new kind of tactical weapon without actually saying what it is. But we know North Korea has been conducting engine tests at a known launch site.
Pot pardons in Illinois as weed becomes legal in the land of Lincoln for people 21 and older.
Ending what he called a 50-year-long war on cannabis, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker granted pardons for low-level marijuana convictions.
These 11,017 misdemeanor convictions represent individuals who have carried around with them a stain on their records for possessing less than 30 grams of cannabis, a stain that has very often prevented them from obtaining housing or jobs or benefits.
State officials said about 116,000 convictions are eligible for pardons under the new law. I'm Barbara Cusack.
I'm Michael Toscano.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
All the rivers and springs of water continually flow into the water of the ocean, which surrounds the world like a ring. But the ocean is not filled, and the place to where the rivers continually flow, they return there in order to flow from the spout of the deep. That's Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 7 in the Targum version. The water surrounding the world like a ring. I mean, that, in my opinion, nails it, with regard to the boundaries and all that. But did you want to read something or bring something forth, brother?
Yeah, it's long, so right before the break, I just referenced the URL, but people can go to testingtheglobe.com/pillars.html. It's part 6 in a series, and that's where I was talking about the pillars of the earth. But if you scroll down, about halfway down the page or so, I deal with the Job 26:7 issue, empty space or whatnot. And
yes.
There's a lengthy quotation from an article written by Dr. Robert Schneider, from excerpts from his article called "Does the Bible Teach a Spherical Earth?" And there's a link for his full article there. But for those interested in this topic, it's a very, very interesting read regarding what we're talking about here. But, I mean, when we were of the Copernican model mindset, we were all engaging in eisegesis. We were imposing our own thoughts, our own biases to the text, and using Isaiah 40:22, circle, not ball, sphere, globe, but circle, and saying that, see, Job 26:7 hangs the earth on nothing, and the earth's a circle, so therefore it's a globe hanging in space. I mean, it's like, and I look back at it now because I did the same thing.
Right.
I'm like, see, thousands of years ago, thousands of years, they knew the earth was a globe hanging in space, but we didn't read it. I mean, talk about cherry picking. We were totally cherry picking right there. Yes. But even looking at Job 26 now, there's a lot going on there. But it's a good complement to the Book of Enoch. And
yes,
I am, and I'm pretty sure you are the same opinion, that Enoch predates the flood. And so Job being the oldest recognized book of the canonized text, Enoch predates Job, and Job's therefore just confirming what Enoch had already said.
Right. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. because I do believe, and it describes in different texts, and I believe the Assatir speaks about this, which also, just so you know, I did send you a copy of that along with the travels of Noah into Europe and some other things, the calendar. So check your P.O. box at some point.
Yeah, I saw an email come in for that. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries, because I think you'll find that of interest. But I want to share one final passage with regard to this north and how it speaks about it. From the Chronicles of Jeremiah in chapter 7, it says, "Four winds were created in the world, the winds coming from the east, south, north, and west. And from the eastern corner the light of the world goeth forth. From the south the dews of blessing descend upon the world. From the west emanate the stores of snow, hail, cold, and heat, and rains for the benefit of the world. The north corner of the world he created, but did not complete. For he said, Whoever declares himself to be God, let him come and finish this corner which I have left, and then shall all know that he is a God. There the demons, earthquakes, evil spirits, and Shittim dwell, and from there they come forth to the world. As it is said, out of the north evil shall break forth." And it's interesting that this passage, speaking about the north, one final verse, and this is from the Brenton Septuagint translation of Isaiah, because I talk about how it is from the north that, the locust army, the supernatural armies, the giants at the end of days shall be released. It says this in chapter 13, the vision which Isaiah son of Amos saw against Babylon. Lift up a standard on the mountain of the plain, exalt the voice to them, beckon with the hand, open the gates, ye rulers. I give command and I bring them. Giants are coming to fulfill my wrath, rejoicing at the same time and insulting. A voice of many nations on the mountains, even like to that of many nations, a voice of kings and nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts has given command to a warlike nation to come from a land afar off, from the utmost foundation of heaven. The Lord and his warriors are coming to destroy all the world. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is near, and destruction from God shall arrive. And so I do believe that, this is all speaking about the same place, that there's at the North Pole this kind of abysmal chasm, which I believe is a hollow earth entrance into the interior of the earth, where it says the sides of the pit, where Lucifer was cast down, and that his domain is in the interior of the earth, that, Sheol, Tartarus, Gehenna, those are all aspects of where Legion rules.
Yeah, that you were quoting, what chapter is that? That's Isaiah.
Chapter 13, verses 1 through 6 in the Brenton Septuagint.
Yeah, first time I'd ever heard that was when Tom Horn was, he had written the book Nephilim Stargates, and he was on a show talking with Steve Quayle, and he was bringing that, again, you kind of miss it in the Septuagint, but in the Septuagint, in the King James, but in the Septuagint, right. Speak to the gates, ye ruler, giants are coming to fulfill my wrath. And then you pair that up with the bottomless pit opening up in Revelation 9 in the Joel 2 army, and you got Christians, even big mega churches here in the DFW Metroplex, talking about they believe they are the Joel 2 army. I'm like, did you even read the text? It's talking about Nephilim hybrid giants coming up out of the bottomless pit. You better not be the Joel 2 army. That's not what you want to identify yourself with. Man. It's just crazy.
Right.
But, all right.
All right.
And you want to move on to chapter 18? Okay.
18.
Let me do the screen share here again for those watching on YouTube. All right, Enoch chapter 18. Then I surveyed the receptacles of all the winds, perceiving that they contributed to adorn the whole creation and to preserve the foundation of the earth. I surveyed the stone which supports the corners of the earth. I also beheld the four winds which bear up the earth in the firmament of heaven, and I beheld the winds occupying the exalted sky, arising in the midst of heaven and of earth, and constituting the pillars of heaven. I saw the winds which turn the sky, which cause the orb of the sun and of all the stars to set, and over the earth I saw the winds which support the clouds. I saw the path of the angels. I perceived at the extremity of the earth the firmament of heaven above it. Then I passed on towards the south, where burnt both by day and night 6 mountains formed of glorious stones, 3 towards the east and 3 towards the south. Those which were upwards or towards the east were of a variegated stone, one of which was of margarite, and the other, that's interesting, another of antimony. Those towards the south were of redstone. The middle one reached to heaven like the throne of God, a throne composed of alabaster, the top of which was of sapphire. I saw, too, a blazing fire hanging over all the mountains, and there I saw a place on the other side of an extended territory where waters were collected. I likewise beheld terrestrial fountains deep in the fiery columns of heaven. And in the columns of heaven I beheld fires which descended without number, but neither on high nor into the deep. Over these fountains also I perceived a place which had neither the firmament of heaven above it, nor the solid ground beneath it, neither was there water above it, nor anything on wing, but the spot was desolate. And there I beheld 7 stars, like great blazing mountains, and like spirits entreating me. Then the angel said, This place, until the consummation of heaven and earth, will be the prison of the stars, and the hosts of heaven. The stars which roll over fire are those which transgressed the commandment of God before their time arrived, for they came not in their proper season. Therefore was he offended with them, and bound them until the period of the consummation of their crimes in the secret year. Interesting.
Yeah, fascinating. All right, from the R.H. Charles translation. I saw the treasuries of all the winds. I saw how he had furnished with them the whole creation and the firm foundations of the earth. And I saw the cornerstone of the earth. I saw the 4 winds which bear the earth, and the firmament of the heaven. And I saw how the winds stretch out the vaults of heaven, and have their station between heaven and earth. These are the pillars of the heaven. I saw the winds of heaven which turn and bring the circumference of the sun, and all the stars to their setting. I saw the winds on the earth carrying the clouds. I saw the paths of the angels. I saw the end of the earth, the firmament of the heaven above. And I proceeded and saw a place which burns day and night, where there are 7 mountains of magnificent stone, 3 towards the east and 3 towards the south. And as for those towards the east, was of colored stone, and one of pearl, and one of jacinth, and those towards the south of redstone. But the middle one reached to heaven, like the throne of God, of alabaster, and the summit of the throne was of sapphire. And I saw a flaming fire, and beyond these mountains is a region, the end of the great earth. There the heavens were completed. And I saw a deep abyss with columns of heavenly fire, and among them I saw columns of fire fall, which were beyond measure, alike towards the height and towards the depth. And beyond that abyss I saw a place which had no firmament of the heaven above, and no firmly founded earth beneath it. There was no water upon it, and no birds, but it was a waste and horrible place. I saw there 7 stars, like great burning mountains, and to me When I inquired regarding them, the angel said, "This place is the end of heaven and earth. This has become a prison for the stars and the host of heaven, and the stars which roll over the fire are they which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord in the beginning of their rising, because they did not come forth at their appointed times. And he was wroth with them and bound them till the time when their guilt should be consummated, even for 10,000 years." And so I guess we should definitely talk about the stars and, this place, because it seems, again, connected to Sheol. And we know that Tartarus is where the angels are held, and these stars could be part of those in confinement there.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing people need to take note of there is that in verse 15, it clearly tells you that the stars are sentient beings that chose to rebel.
Right.
In this particular case,
Yes.
But stars in general are sentient beings. These particular ones went into a form of rebellion, and at some point, early on, it appears they decided not to come forth at their appointed times. And it's interesting to me that there's 7 of them, and I'm wondering if this has some correlation to the Pleiades.
Huh. That's interesting. Consideration.
I mean, that's the Subaru, the car Subaru. There's lots. I mean, if you just look into the ancient understanding of the Pleiades, it's a pretty rich volume of literature out there talking about it. And the Greeks also had, I believe it was, I can't remember if it was 7 or 9. I want to say it was 7. It could be 9 though. Muses. Yeah,
I think it is 7.
Yeah, I seem to think it's 7 too, because it seemed like they were associated with the Pleiades. But it's interesting because Job talks about, canst thou bind the sweet influences of the Pleiades, and loose the bands of Orion. That there's this understanding of the Pleiades as sentient beings that have some kind of influence over men, and that God's not happy about it. That and the well, I'll let you comment on that if you want to say anything, and then we talk about the stones in the mountains.
Well, yeah, I'd never considered as far as Pleiades, but yeah, and that's something I have no real understanding upon. I haven't looked at it and examined it, but yeah, that's an interesting connection with regard to 7, because in my mind, with regard to some of the other scriptures like Chronicles of Jeremiah, they describe 7 the planets of the universe, but they include the sun and the moon together with Mercury, Mars, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter. And it wouldn't make sense if 7 were bound. Certainly the sun and moon weren't part of those that were bound, but the other 5, because I had thought previously that perhaps the wandering stars not coming forth at their time previously at some point in the past, that they were replaced. But it would only make sense that would be 5, because again, we don't see that account for the sun and the moon ever having been substituted in any manner. So their connection to the Pleiades would explain the that particular story in a different light.
Yeah, I just looked up. I had actually written about this in the introduction to my Archon Invasion book. There were 9 muses.
Oh, right
on. I'm not going to try to pronounce their names, but they were epic poetry being one, history, flutes and lyric poetry, comedy and pastoral poetry, tragedy, dance, love poetry, sacred poetry, and astronomy were what they were known for, as far as attributes. But regardless, I mean, whether we're talking about the Pleiades or not, I mean, the Pleiades certainly has some interesting things written about them in canonized texts, but also elsewhere. I don't know that what we just read here is a direct correlation to them, or if this is another group of stars. But wandering stars reserved for judgment is what Jude talks about. And again, this shows that Jude clearly was influenced by the Book of Enoch, because we have precedence for that. Nowhere else do we have precedence for that.
Right.
Although I wonder, if it might be talking about the planets.
Yeah. But again, with regard to the planets, if they are speaking about the wandering stars, then is there? Because again, I don't see anywhere where it speaks about the sun and the moon ever being replaced.
Right.
But the other wandering stars, if they did not come forth in their appointed time, and but then that would only be 5. But again, I don't know if there's some other that we don't know about that rebelled, or but again, it's something interesting to consider.
Yeah. The stones caught my attention as we were reading. Let me do a screen share again for everybody. Because it mentioned in verse 10 margarite and antimony in the Lawrence translation. What did the
pearl and jacinth.
Interesting. Pearl and jacinth. Yeah, I wonder. I wonder why it's translated that way, or if these stones were just known by other names.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, antimony caught my attention because that's what Azazel was directly associated with.
I just had a thought too about the different stars, the wandering stars, because how in the second book of Enoch, it makes mention of the lesser moon, and how we have Ratu and Ketu spoken about in the Vedic cosmology as being these two dark objects that are responsible for the eclipses. And so if you included them, then that number would be 7. So I don't know, just interest, speculation.
Yeah, well, something interesting to think about, that's for sure.
Right, yeah.
All right, you want to, we've got 6 minutes to break, something like that?
Yes.
Okay, let me head over to chapter 19. Then Uriel said, "Here the angels who cohabited with women appointed their leaders, and being numerous in appearance made men profane and caused them to err, so that they sacrificed to devils as to gods. For in the great day there shall be a judgment, with which they shall be judged, until they are consumed, and their wives also shall be judged, who led astray the angels of heaven, that they might salute them. And I, Enoch, I alone saw the likeness of the end of all things, nor did any human being see it as I saw it."
Chapter 19 from R.H. Charles. "And Uriel said to me, Here shall stand the angels who have connected themselves with women, and their spirits, assuming many different forms, are defiling mankind, and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. There shall they stand till the day of the great judgment, in which they shall be judged, till they are made an end of. And the women also of the angels who went astray shall become sirens. And I, Enoch, alone saw the vision, the ends of all things, and no man shall see as I have seen."
Yeah, that's interesting that the women's were judged also, and this seems to indicate, at least to me, that they were complicit in the situation, where they were intentionally seducing the angels. It wasn't so much like rape, like the angels had said, I'm taking you and
wives of all which they chose.
Yeah,
yes.
All which they chose, but were they seduced into the choosing?
Right.
And so that's what appears to me have been going on here, that the women here, presumably the daughters of Cain, in this situation, as other texts will tell you,
Right.
were complicit in this great sin, and that they were intentionally seducing these angels to cohabit with them. And as a result, we miss it here in the Lawrence translation, but in the Charles translation, it says that the women shall become sirens.
Right.
That's
So they were transformed in some manner. And then we see that in the story of the Greek mythology, there was, the sirens that sang to and lured.
Yeah.
And was that in connection to the whirlpool too?
Yeah, I want to say so. I'm thinking Pirates of the Caribbean, because I think that they actually addressed that. But I'm trying to remember, is it the siren that is this signified as the woman that's a lot of times tied to the front of the boat?
In
the carving.
Right, yeah. And the mast.
The mast.
But in the story of Odysseus, he has all of his crew
they
plug their ears.
Yeah.
And they tie him to the mast so that he can hear and listen to the sound, the singing of the sirens, but not be lured, because he can't move or control, the maneuvers of the boats, and they weren't to take commands from him. But it seems somehow, even if it's not in direct connection to the whirlpool, that in his journeys, without a doubt, he encountered Sharbertus, and then, even his boat was wrecked, and he was the only one. He had to hold on to this tree branch that came off of the magnetic mountain until the whirlpool reversed course and spit out, got in geyser, and then he jumped upon this piece of wood and was able to get away. But yeah, it's all. Oh, and it also describes him seeing the bottom, of the looking down and peering into the bottomless chasm and seeing the sandy bottom and all the waters, flowing into, and then it reversing course and beginning to spit out the waters of the deep.
Yeah, I've found some pottery that has imagery of the sirens that depicted like human-headed birds flying all around. Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back, everyone, for the final segment.
Extendivite, a 7-herb combination made from garlic, cayenne, hawthorn, bilberry, ginkgo biloba, valerian, and milk thistle. Extendivite feeds our body with the right nutrients to keep us healthy. Just listen to what Arthur has to say.
I was just calling to tell you what a great product you have. I had used this about 10 years ago after I had congestive heart failure. And it fixed me up and got me going for the last 10 years. Lately, I've been having heart trouble again, so I placed another order because this was the only thing that ever worked. And I just wanted to let you know that you have a great product.
To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822, or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Do you want to lose weight but have no idea where to begin? The Fast Start Diet, a 3-day weight loss plan, is the answer. 3 days of nutritionally balanced, calorie-restricted meals delivered right to your door. No shopping, no measuring, and no cooking. Everything is prepared for you and ready to eat at home or on the go. The Fast Start Diet has all the amazing benefits of intermittent fasting without starving. We've helped thousands of people who have struggled to reach their weight loss goals. Isn't it time we helped you? With the Fast Start Diet, you'll lose weight and feel great.
Find us on Amazon or go to faststartdiet.com and use promo code POWER. to get $10 off your first box. As a special bonus, we will include our #1 rated Lipo3 appetite suppressant spray free with your order. Whatever your diet plans are, start with us at faststartdiet.com and use promo code POWER.
Jacob Frank Leibovich is the mastermind behind a global network of satanic cults. He taught that the Creator God was evil. Jacob Frank proclaimed himself as the true Messiah. He vowed never to tell the truth. He rejected every moral law and declared that the only way to a new society was through the total destruction of civilization. Murder, rape, incest, and the drinking of blood were perfectly acceptable actions and rituals. His followers established the Marxist system and have infiltrated Islam and Judaism. He was the Messiah of the Illuminati.
EnigmaTV.com.
We are TFR.
My faith in destiny is all I need to prevail.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Surely vain are all men by nature, who are ignorant of God, and could not out of the good things that are seen know him that is. Neither by considering the works did they acknowledge the workmaster, but deemed either fire, wind, or the swift air, or the circle of the stars, or the violent water, or the lights of heaven, to be the gods which govern the world, with whose beauty, if they, being delighted, took them to be gods, let them know how much better the Lord of them is. For the first author of beauty hath created them. But if they were astonished at their power and virtue, let them understand by them how much mightier he is that made them. The Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 13. The passage that we had read about how men were led to sacrifice unto gods, and how the giants established, the worship of their fathers, these pantheon of gods and goddesses. One of the things that, in my mind, shows that, these pagan gods and goddesses are in some manner evil is the direct correlation to the demand for victim or blood or children's sacrifice, and the cannibalism or the blood drinking, which becomes part of the ritual of the worship of these deities. And so, that in my mind is common sense. And then we see in Deuteronomy and other passages where it speaks about how the pagan nations sacrificed unto devils.
Yeah. Right before the break, I was saying I just did a Google search. I typed in the sirens, and I saw some pottery and different representations. I've seen them depicted two ways. I've seen them depicted like mermaids. So you have the upper body of a woman with the lower body of a fish. But in a lot of these depictions, they have the body of a bird and the head and arms of a female woman. So I was just thinking about that being an interesting correlation with Genesis and the creation account, that the birds and the fish, are created the same day. So maybe there is some kind of correlation between them being depicted either as birds or as fish, of them being of, I don't know how would I say this? I mean, they're created in the same way, I guess. That birds, they swim in we talked about this when we talked about that day of creation.
Right.
That birds swim in the water of the atmosphere, and fish swim in the water of the the seas and the lakes and whatnot. So they are of similar kind, at least in that regard.
Right.
But let me go back to chapter 19 there. Made men profane and caused them to err, so they sacrificed to devils and to gods, is what Lawrence says, and Charles says that they might sacrifice to demons as gods.
Right.
And there's a difference here. If we're talking demons, because we saw in chapter 15 that demons are the disembodied spirits of formerly living angel-human hybrids. You kill an angel-human hybrid, its spirit becomes a wandering, unclean spirit known as a demon. And so we see here that the angels apparently, and the mothers, those who survived, presumably, because the Kabbalah Nagash talks about many of them not surviving the birth.
Splitting open their bellies of their mothers.
Were having the spirits of their offspring worshipped.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's the way I'm seeing this. If we're talking about demons, then this would have been after the clash of the Titans, the slaughter of the first generation Nephilim, their spirits going out, becoming wandering, unclean spirits known as demons, and this would appear to be, a situation where the mothers and the fathers, at this time anyway, were having their men worship these disembodied spirits as gods.
But considering it the other way,
there's a different way.
If it's the gods, then the Nephilim or the giants would be establishing their parents as in worshiping them as gods. So like the pantheon, those who from the heavens came.
Yeah, that's where Lawrence seems to have a bit of a different appeal to it. Sacrifice. If you think of the devil, he's an angel.
Yes, exactly.
So where Lawrence says sacrifice to devils as gods, I would take that to represent fallen angels.
Right.
Charles leads me to believe that it's disembodied spirits of formerly living angel-human hybrids. Either way, we see that men are being led astray to worshiping other gods other than Yahuwah.
Yes.
All right, you want to jump on 20?
Yes. Let's continue on.
All right. These are the names of the angels who watch. Uriel, one of the holy angels, who presides over clamor and terror. Raphael, one of the holy angels, who presides over the spirits of men. Raguel, one of the holy angels, who inflicts punishment on the world and the luminaries. Michael, one of the holy angels, who presiding over human virtue commands the nations. Spherical, one of the holy angels, who presides over the spirits of the children of men that transgress. Gabriel, one of the holy angels, who presides over Ikaset, over paradise and over the cherubim. That's where that ends.
Okay. Yeah, there's one more in the R.H. Charles.
One more verse?
One more angel, Remiel, but
okay.
I'll read it.
All right.
Chapter 20. And these are the names of the holy angels who watch. Uriel, one of the holy angels who is over the world and over Tartarus. Raphael, one of the holy angels who is over the spirits of men. Raguel, one of the holy angels who takes vengeance on the world of the luminaries. Michael, one of the holy angels, to wit, he that is set over the best part of mankind and over chaos. Spherical, one of the holy angels who is set over the spirits who sin in the spirit. Gabriel, one of the holy angels who is over paradise and the serpents and the cherubim. Remiel, one of the holy angels whom God set over those who rise.
That's interesting. So yeah, Charles has a 8th verse.
Right.
Gabriel presides over Ikaset. That's verse 7. What does it say? Over paradise.
So I wonder what Ikaset is.
Yeah, I wonder. It's spelled Ikisat. Oh, well, wait a minute. There's a footnote here. To the rejection of. Presides over Ikaset. The italic words in the text supply an ellipsis. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how to make that, what to make of that, but it is interesting. I mean, it's missing an angel here. Does it look Spherical? Yep, Spherical.
And it's also interesting that these angels, which we know them to be the archangels of the Most High God, are categorized as watchers as well.
Yeah, I must have just totally skipped over that, but I mean, it does say holy angels who watch.
Right.
Right there.
Right,
and Daniel's the only canonized text that refers to that class of angels, the watchers. Right. So, and we know that Gabriel did appear to Daniel. So, I mean, that makes sense, I guess.
Well, there's the Testament of Amram, the father of Moshe. In that, it talks about the watchers, and then it describes the holy and the unholy, Michael and Satan, and then it speaks about Satan as being, having the visage of a viper.
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking
about? Yeah, I've heard that before. Are you aware of any text? Is that a text or any text that you're aware of that talks about what Jude is saying, where it says Satan wrestled with Michael over the body of Moses?
Yes.
Are you aware of any text that says that?
Yeah, I believe in the Legends of the Jews, it makes comment about that. But I have read it in some of the other accounts. I just can't remember exactly where I read that, but I'll look it up and then I'll get back with you.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. It's one of those questions that's always kind of plagued me, because I mean, here you have it in the canonized text. Even as Satan who wrestled over the body. Like, well, where's he getting this from?
Right.
But I mean, this again just proves that the authors of Scripture were well acquainted with these what we now call extra biblical texts.
Right.
And anytime people want to argue over the issue of canon, I say, okay, fine. Go show me in the canon where God ever told anybody to make a canon, which books to put in the canon and which ones to take out, and then you'll have an argument.
Exactly.
Until then, you have no argument.
Doesn't exist, right?
I mean, I'm happy with the 66 canon. I'm glad we have it, but I don't see any biblical case for a canon. Being assigned and limited.
Right. Yeah. No, that doesn't exist, because God never instructed us to do that.
Yeah.
In fact, He even says, in Second Esdras, He tells them to keep certain books for the elect, and others to, make those available to the masses. And so.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and like 70 out of the 200 and something, he told them to, to keep only for the elect. But I found here in manuscript B, which is from the Testament of Amram, it is fragmented, but I did pull up the passage, and it says, I saw watchers in my vision, the dream vision. 2 men were fighting over me, saying, and then there's a break, ... and holding a great contest over me. I asked them, who are you that you are thus empowered over me? They answered, we have been empowered and rule over all mankind. They said to me, which of us do you choose to rule you? I raised my eyes and looked. One of them was terrifying in his appearance, like a serpent, his cloak many-colored, yet very dark, dot, dot, dot. And I looked again, and dot, 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 in his appearance, his visage like a viper, and wearing exceedingly in all his eyes. And then in the second fragment, it just says, empowered over you, dot, dot, dot. I replied to him, this watcher, who is he? He answered me, this watcher, dot, dot, dot. And his three names are Belial, and Prince of Darkness, and King of Evil. I said, my Lord, what dominion, dot, dot, dot. And his every way is darkened, his every work darkened. In darkness he, dot, dot, dot. You saw, and he is empowered over all darkness, while I am empowered over all light, dot, dot, dot. From the highest regions to the lowest, I rule over all light and over all that is of God. I rule over every man. And so, this is again Michael speaking to Amram, who was the father of Moshe. And in this fragmented testament, he talks about, seeing this particular Satan as this viper.
Yeah, I mean, we hear that a lot. That old serpent, the dragon.
Right.
Satan is
to deceive the whole world.
Yeah, obviously, he's described that way.
Right.
It is interesting in the Lawrence translation that it's talking about Gabriel, one of the holy angels who presides over Ikaset, over paradise, and over the cherubim. In the Charles, it says that he is over paradise and the serpents and the cherubim. And I've wondered that when you look at the cherubim, it's an animal-human hybrid.
Right.
The cherubim that we have described for us in the canonized text has the head of a eagle, a lion, an ox, and a human. I believe are the four. And I think it was Chuck Missler that I first heard say that. He's like, notice what's missing. If we think of those as each of those as kingdoms, animal kingdoms and the human kingdom, what's missing? Well, you're missing the lizards, the insects, and the fish.
Right.
And isn't it interesting that whenever we hear about alien abductions, what do we always hear about? Insectoids,
right.
Reptoids, and Dogon fish god type.
Right.
Is it just a coincidence, right? So, and we know that Satan was the anointed cherub. He was of the class of the cherubim. So then, could it be that he presided? If the cherubim are over classes of kingdoms, and we see here that some of these angels are, that Satan was of the class of the cherubim that was in charge of that group of creation.
Right.
And so, consequently, now, whenever we deal with these so-called aliens, again, as we've established, the biblical enclosed world cosmology obliterates that whole notion.
Yes.
But people who still believe in the Copernican model, and who, you go to a Contact in the Desert type of conference, and there's another one coming up. I'm thinking about probably going to it again, that I went to last year. And they talk about that. I mean, the so-called aliens that they're always describing are reptilian. They are insectoid. And they'll say, I forget how many different groups varieties of alien races supposedly that are out there, and some are friendly to mankind and some are not.
The good and the bad. Yeah.
It's just this big game that this class of angels apparently is playing with men.
Right. And it's interesting that in Scripture that Yeshua also says that he would give us power to tread upon serpents and scorpions.
Yep, there you go. Insects and reptiles, and
right.
I don't think it's in that context, at least in the context of what we're reading here. I don't think it's talking about rattlesnakes and
right. No, not at all.
Texas scorpions. It sounds to me like there's a much deeper message going on here.
Right, especially. And I believe I sent these to you too, the Great Commission. But in this story of the Great Commission, there's one specifically that talks about Andrew and Matthias being sent to the city of the man-eaters. And in this particular place, this is like a stronghold of Satan. And all the apostles like wanted to avoid this place. They even got to the point where they had to draw straws to decide who was going to go there. And so Yeshua sends them to this particular place. And when Andrew gets there, they do this to all the travelers. They gouge out his eyes, and then they feed him these drugs to put him kind of out of his mind. And the drugs don't work on him, but they then fatten him up. And then every once in a while, the whole city, they come out, they slaughter 7 of these prisoners, and then they cut up, divide the bodies, split them amongst the inhabitants, and then they feast and gorge themselves on their human flesh and drinking the blood. They capture all of the blood as well. And so, but what is interesting is that in the story of this particular place, they also worship a dragon there. And it's like, the apocryphal text, Bel and the Dragon, where Daniel actually feeds it, these cakes with bitumen and, then blows it up from the inside out. But, that it was not like a serpent, but like a basilisk, like some kind of dragon-like entity that the people of this city, they worshipped. And it was a physical, dragon, some type of, not a serpent, but some kind of mythical type of basilisk that they worshipped. And they worshipped these kind of as deities, these particular creatures, in many different places where these strongholds existed, where they worshiped Satan, and they involved themselves in this kind of abomination. And if people want to know more about what I'm talking about, you can just look up the city of the man-eaters. It's a text from the Ante-Nicene Church Fathers, but we also published it in the Great Commission 1, which is a compilation of text that like the book of the Acts, but all of the different apostles going out and the things they encountered. And this is one of the most incredible stories of the dangers and the evil that they encountered and had to overcome.
Wow.
And the city was converted.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of any of that. That's all like, wow, like very eye-opening,
it is.
Crazy, wild stuff. But I mean, even in the canonized text, we do have like the Lion Men of Moab.
Yes, exactly. And well, just really quickly, the Lion Men of Moab, I was writing about this in the 4 Maccabees, where the high priest Eleazar and his wife and the 7 sons, they are tortured. They are specifically tortured by the Lion Men of Moab, who are working for Antiochus IV Epiphanes. And and they're trying to force them to renounce their faith and to eat food sacrificed unto idols.
Wow.
So that's interesting as well.
Shalmaneser. I'm trying to look up something real quick here. Shalmaneser the third, I think it was. There's an obelisk. Trying to. Oh yeah, okay. Let me just do a screen share here. I did a Google search for Lion Men obelisk of Shalmaneser the third, and in it, here you go. I just pulled up the screen. It shows these men holding these lions on a leash that have human heads.
Oh wow!
This is on the black obelisk of Shalmaneser III. And I mean, that whole obelisk is pretty crazy when you look at the imagery on it. I'm not seeing it in this Google search. Right? Oh yeah, I am. Here, hang on. I'm pulling up another one. these were giants that are holding these lion men. I mean, if those lions are presumably the size of a standard lion, they're pretty good size, and they show what looks like a full-grown elephant with a long tusk, is walking ahead of them. So, if that's a full-grown elephant, and these are regular lion-sized lion men with human heads, then they are, they're held by a leash of giants, because the giants are a good head and shoulders above the back of the elephant.
Wow, that's amazing.
And this guy, if I'm not mistaken, he is mentioned in Scripture, Shalmaneser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is.
So, you have Scripture talking about lion men, and you have this character in Scripture, Shalmaneser, and you have this obelisk of the black obelisk of Shalmaneser III, showing lion men, like literally hybrids, lions with human heads.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
So, I just maintain that, people need to realize the ancient world was way different than, what we're taught, and especially standard Christianity, where everything's just, they want to throw all this stuff out. But the ancient record is quite clear. This stuff was very real.
Mm-hmm. As bizarre as it seems, there was a lot of hybrid creatures. I mean, even the rampant appearance and presence of the giants. I mean, just that in itself would have been bizarre, especially in the stature and the manner that they are said to be presented within Scripture. We can't wrap our minds around all of that.
Yeah, I was, I don't know why I torture myself like this sometimes, but I saw there was a ministry out there, and I can't think of the name of the ministry. It's a church, I want to say it's in New Jersey or someplace. Anyway, they put out a really good video, actually. It's called World Upside Down, I think was the title of it, or Earth Upside Down, or something like that. But it's a very well done flat Earth documentary, just saying, hey, look, this is what the Bible says, right?
Yeah, I just started watching part of that, actually.
Yeah, if you watch some of my videos, I put a few clips from their video in my video. Actually, he brought up a really good point I'd never thought of, but he's talking about in Revelation where one of the plagues poured out on the sun, and the 1/3 of the sun is darkened, and so the third of the day, is dark. And he's saying that is not possible in the Copernican model. And so if you think of a stationary sun with 1/3 of it blocked out, then that would mean that for 1/3 of the orbit of the Earth, it would be in darkness for 1/3 of the year. But Scripture says 1/3 of the day.
Wow, we're already to the end.
Yeah.
Crazy.
All right,
hey,
man,
it was a good time.
Yeah, next week.
Yeah, next week. Be blessed, everyone. Shalom.